Within these mountains, there is a mysterious cave that has captured the imagination of so many. Some of the ancient artifacts that were discovered in this cave date back as far as 2,700 years ago. This dangerous cave is located in the middle of a cliff. There is a 15-meter dive, and we need ropes, harnesses, and all types of rock climbing equipment to be able to get inside. There is a 50-meter fall if anything goes wrong. We talked a little bit about the history of the objects of this cave in part 1. If you want to get yourself familiarized with that, please go ahead and watch it. Let's begin. Just to refresh your memories, I'd like to bring your attention to a little writing on this plate. That is the Elamite cuneiform alphabet, and it dates back to 2,700 years ago. It was written by the kingdom of Somatoro, and it says, "I am Amperish, the son of Debala." The story goes that there was this shepherd who had a mountain goat, and once in a while the goat disappeared into these rocks, drank some water, and went back up. One day the shepherd became curious. He wanted to find the source of this water. So he followed the goat, and that brought him to the cave. As soon as he stepped in, he saw ancient coins on the ground. The Assyrian Empire was probably the most advanced civilization of its time, and they had the very first standing army in the world. Their army was so organized and powerful that every time they invaded Zagros, people of Zagros started packing up and leaving. But before leaving, they hid their valuable materials under the ground or in the caves. More than 2,000 years later, people of this area accidentally discovered treasures from underneath the ground or in the caves. Back in 1988, the shepherd called up some families and friends, and they started looting. And then the news spread across the town, and other people interested in free ancient artifacts joined in, and then everyone started looting until there was nothing left. About 100 objects and artifacts discovered in this cave belong to the kingdom of Somatoro and the Elamites. However, that is not the end of the story. Some of the ancient artifacts date back to sometimes after the collapse of Assyria. That includes this golden chariot. It dates back to at least 150 years after the collapse of the Assyrian Empire. In other words, other empires and kingdoms were still using this cave, and in this video, we're gonna find out who. In 334 BC, the Greeks invaded Persia. Alexander the Great is the military commander of the Greeks, one of the best generals in history. The Greeks defeat the Persians in every single battle until they reach a place called the Persian Gates. In the Persian Gates, 700 Persian soldiers tried to slow down the advancement of the Greeks for a very good reason. The bodies of 4 individuals were discovered in this cave. 3 of them were buried and 1 of them was unburied. Carbon dating showed that they had died somewhere between 300 and 350 BC. That's exactly the time that Alexander's army invaded Persia. These were Persian guards. They were guarding the valuable materials of this cave. But what happened to them? In the Battle of the Persian Gates, every single Persian dies, and Alexander's army makes its way towards the capital of Persia, the city of Persepolis. On the left of this image, you can see the treasury of the Persian Empire. The empire was a coin-based economy, so this was more like a central bank. This is where all the golds, the silvers, and the coins were stored. After a couple of nights of partying, the Greeks looted out the treasury and sent all the materials to Greece. And then they burned down the city. What Alexander didn't know was that some of the materials were already taken out by the Persians. And if you lived in those times, encountering similar situations, where would you hide your valuables? Some historians believe that the Greeks were in the vicinity. They had received information about a cave with valuable materials inside. But they just couldn't pinpoint the exact location of the cave. The guards had a tough choice to make. They could leave the cave and risk getting captured by the Greeks, in which case they had to expose the exact location of the cave. This cave has 4 compartments, and the first 2 are connected via a small tunnel, and it is so narrow that you literally have to crawl. The guards were the only people who knew that materials from Persepolis were delivered to this cave, and this was a dangerous information. So, the outside guards placed a large rock in the narrow tunnel, blocking the only available exit. The guards starved to death in this cave, and the death of the guards buried the secret of Kalmakareh cave for the next 2300 years. Kalmakareh cave isn't just a cave with some valuable materials inside. It is a story, the story of empires and kingdoms in the past that once in a while invaded, looted, and caused fears among the locals. The cave also signifies an element of sacrifice and loyalty, something that was not observed again in the 1980s when the cave was rediscovered. To end this video, I will show you another cave. This cave is partly man-made and partly natural, and it's been used by humans for over 6,000 years. Let's jump inside. The Greeks never found the Kalmakareh cave, but instead they found other caves, for example this one right here. This cave was used by the Persians and the Medes from 600 to 300 BC, and very likely there were golds hidden inside. It was captured by the Greeks about 10 years after the invasion of Alexander. This cave is about 4 stories tall, and my goal is to get myself to the 3rd floor, where there is a room, and on top of the room there is a writing. The writing has been covered by a piece of glass. You may be able to detect some ancient Greek alphabets. These were written here 2300 years ago. This was where Alexander's generals had meetings and made plans for the future. The Greeks may have taken some gold and silver out of here, but in return, they brought something novel to Persia: their philosophy and their advanced military tactics.